So, Matt Reeves' The Batman is finally out in theaters, and I finally went to go see it. 3 weeks late. And I have to say that I was pretty excited to go see this movie. I've been anticipating The Batman since 2017, and then Ben Affleck left the role. And then things were going underway in 2019, and then COVID happened. But now it's here, so I couldn't be happier. I've been watching the trailer, quoting lines from previews, and just building up the hype for myself to see this movie. So is The Batman everything I hoped for? Is it the interpretation of the character that I've been hoping for on the big screen? Were we finally going to get the world's greatest detective in full force? Well, yes to all three of those questions. This movie is everything that I've wanted and hoped for out of a Batman film, and it's probably my favorite Batman movie ever, and maybe even the best one. That's right, you heard me right. You're not deaf, you heard me correctly. But before I go on and talk about the best parts of this film, I think it's the best decision to get some of my nitpicks out of the way first so that I can spend more time talking about what I liked. First off, the nitpick / critique that most people have on this film is that although there's a lot of Batman in this movie, there isn't much of Bruce Wayne to see, meaning that there isn't really much of a distinction between the two personas and that they really do feel like the same person. Whenever he takes the cowl off, he still feels emo. He's like that kid in the 90s who would be in his room all day listening to grunge music. And although I do agree with the statement about giving Bruce more of a distinction between his Batman side and Bruce side, I think it's something I can forgive this movie for because this is a younger Bruce Wayne who's only been Batman for 2 years. He's going to have trouble separating these two alter egos because Batman is who he is, and he'll probably grow into the billionaire playboy persona throughout this trilogy. I don't think that Alfred is amazing in this film. It's probably because he isn't given much to do, and that isn't down to the fault of Andy Serkis. But I still do prefer Michael Caine's portrayal of the character. It's kind of untouchable if you ask me. Also, I do feel that there are some moments in this film that didn't stay for too long. There are a lot of twists and turns that if used properly can definitely play a big part in the film's strengths, but they felt like it was rushed over and weren't given enough time for it to sink in, especially with the fact that this movie is 3 hours long. We definitely could have let these moments stay for longer so the impact of them can hit harder. Now, I'm not going to say what those moments were because although the film has been out for a few weeks now, I don't think I'm going to give any spoilers in this video. Plus, this is mostly a review, not an essay, so there isn't any need to go in depth with these moments as I normally would do in an essay. I'll do that when the film comes out on digital. But apart from those small nitpicks, I really like this movie. I think this is the definitive Batman movie. Like how most people see Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 102 as the definitive Spider-Man movie, I see Matt Reeves' The Batman as the definition of a Batman movie. First off, this movie is shot in an old school detective noir style which perfectly fits this version of the character. The cinematography as well looks really amazing and Gotham City really does look like a shithole. The last time I saw Gotham City look this shit and accurate to the comics would be Batman Begins, and then after that Gotham looked like Chicago. So I think Matt Reeves does a good job of portraying Gotham City as its own character. And on the back end of saying Gotham City looks like shit, I think this is the best looking Batman movie ever, and possibly the best looking superhero movie that I've seen in quite a long time. The shots just look that amazing. This film looks and feels like a mix of Year One, The Long Halloween, and the Arkham games. It's that good. Second, I think that Robert Pattinson is really good in the role of Batman. He brings a presence to every scene that he is in, and whenever he shows up, you're thinking, oh shit, that's Batman. And can I just say, I love how they portrayed Batman as this boogeyman-like creature. When the film starts, you see a bunch of criminals on the street of Gotham doing no good, and as soon as the bat signal goes up, every criminal starts to shit their pants while looking into the darkness, fearing that Batman will come out of nowhere. It felt like a genuine horror movie that sent chills down my spine. And the last compliment I have for this version of Batman is the character arc he has in this film. I think this movie really does focus on the character of Batman and what he really means to Gotham. The other films do a good job of that, but those films mostly focus on the villains and they're mostly the standout part of those films. For example, Joker was the standout of Batman 89, Catwoman was the standout of Batman Returns, Riddler was the standout of Batman Forever, Mr. Freeze was the standout of Batman and Robin, Joker was the standout of The Dark Knight, and Bane was the standout of The Dark Knight Rises. Do you see the fucking problem? The only time Batman is the standout of his own film before this is Batman Begins. So it's nice to finally see him have a focused arc from beginning to end, and this also ties into the critique of the distinction between Batman and Bruce Wayne being non-existent. Bruce by the end of the film has to learn that having vengeance alone is the wrong message to be sending out to Gotham, and that it's doing more harm than good to the city. He has to learn that he can't just be a symbol of fear and terror, but a symbol of hope and justice. He has to learn what it means to be a hero, and it's nice to see Batman getting this kind of treatment for once on the big screen. While bringing up some of the minor things that I liked, Zoe Kravitz does a good job as Selina Kyle. She really brought the Year One vibe. Colin Farrell did a good job of bringing the cartoonish character of the Penguin onto the big screen. He was really fun to watch whenever he was on screen. Kinda like how he was fun to watch in Daredevil. That movie is still shite, by the way. Jeffrey Wright is now my new favorite on-screen Jim Gordon. Also, the chemistry between Batman and Jim Gordon is probably my favorite partnership that I've seen between the two in all of Batman media. And despite the limited screen time he gets compared to the other actors, Paul Dano is probably my favorite actor in this movie. I really liked how they basically made the Riddler a mix of Jigsaw and the Zodiac Killer. He was really terrifying and unsettling to watch, and that's all down to the acting of Paul Dano. The scene between him and Batman was probably my favorite acting scene of the entire movie because it was all Paul Dano. Also, the score by Michael Giacchino was a lot better than I expected it to be. I'm not exactly the biggest fan of Giacchino, especially when it comes to his Spider-Man score, but I do think he delivers a musical score that joins the Hall of Fame for iconic Batman themes. So overall, The Batman does not disappoint. I think this is the best Batman movie that we've gotten in a long time, and despite the 3-hour runtime, I think it's stomachable to watch. And you don't feel like there aren't any scenes that should be removed to make it shorter. But enough time wasting, plugging this into the grading system, I'm going to give Matt Reeves' The Batman a solid A. That's all for today folks, make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.
Stop singing that fucking song! Just shut the fuck up!